So just a quick update on the Activision Microsoft conversation. Once in a while I'll dabble into it, even though it's not necessarily something that, I really care to talk about because I've already kind of been at the forefront of saying that Microsoft was pretty much going to be causing Sony a little bit of a, distress, not too much. Sony's still going to be fine. But once Microsoft brought in a ton of money from their offshore accounts in this particular generation, I think it was like 2017, right before the console generations launched and Game Pass started to make its way, I kind of sensed that we were going to be in for a huge joyride. And I thought it was just going to be a joyride. I didn't know it was going to be a roller coaster. So here we are. We're talking about Microsoft, pretty much poised to acquire Activision, depending on how things go. There's also the possibility that they back out if things don't necessarily work out. But a few things have actually happened since we last talked. Number one, the EU approved the deal. Number two, the Chinese, competitive or antitrust governing body or whoever it is that is actually doing that in China have also gone ahead to approve the deal. So this is a big deal because the last time when I started talking about this, the CMA had just rejected the deal, and this was the only news a lot of people had in terms of the conversation. So at that time, a lot of people were saying, is it going to be a thing where Microsoft can still go ahead with the deal, or just something where it's still going to be able to happen? And, lo and behold, it seems like that's actually a way for them to go right now. Now, with the FTC, there's litigation still ongoing, and we may be able to see how things play out. If the FTC is not able to, provide a strong case, it might be a thing where, Microsoft might still be able to go with this, and eventually the CMA and the UK might have to get some, back burner type treatment as to Microsoft pretty much acquiring, the company regardless. Now, all of this is very interesting overall, and I think one of the best things that many people don't necessarily realize is this is really good. In fact, if Microsoft acquires Activision or not, it's still good for the conversation and it's still good for the gaming market, however it plays. Why do I say so? Sony is not a baby. Sony is going to be fine. If Microsoft even acquired, Take-Two Interactive while they're at it, Sony is still going to be very fine. The only thing that Sony will need to do is go ahead and just continue to bear down on their strategy and tweak areas that seem to be lacking, in terms of productivity and being able to supply their games to their audiences. And what I mean by that is right now they already have a strategy that's working. That strategy is they provide these first-party games made from high quality and then eventually use those to sell consoles, thereby at least getting people to get their feet into the Sony ecosystem wherever they are, whether they're PC gamers or whether they're Xbox gamers. This is a very strong strategy. If they continue to do this and continue to provide these first-party games with high frequency, they're able to be, they're able to stay, positioned in a very strong way by and large. Now, even if you say, well, how about the other games that Microsoft own in terms of, say, Activision and so on and so forth? Well, Microsoft is not going to own Call of Duty exclusively as far as we know. The reason is because Sony already has such a strong position. It benefits Microsoft to put Call of Duty and Activision games, if possible, on the PlayStation platform for sale. This way, Microsoft is not just going to be sitting there trying to sell these games as exclusives to their console audience. That's pretty much about half of what Sony is able to do in this new generation right now. So at the end of the day, Sony still makes money because if Microsoft puts, say, the next Diablo game on, this is a hypothetical situation anyways. If in a hypothetical situation, if Microsoft were to acquire Activision Blizzard and the next Diablo game was to come out and Microsoft is like, yeah, we're going to put it on the PlayStation Store, every sale that a PlayStation player buys is a fee that Sony gets to keep in their pockets. It's actually a commission in a sense. So this is a big deal, and Sony is still going to be fine because they took the time back in the PlayStation 4 days to really provide a strong proposition for gamers. It's now the cloud side of the conversation that Microsoft is trying to maybe get an edge over them on, that we have to have the conversation. And as it stands, a lot of console gamers and a lot of PC gamers are not necessarily making that move. Now, another thing that also went down was the CMA got questioned by some of their, MPs in their country who are kind of like, I don't know if they're legislators or if they're, I think that's what I'll call them. I don't know how the British government system works 100%, but I think they're kind of like legislators. And if you're British and forgive me, I don't mean to, I don't mean to sound ignorant here, but I did watch that, meeting. I watched the entire questioning of where the MPs, there were two of them, were talking about the Microsoft merger and, an Activision merger. And they said, what do things look like? Are you guys, talking with the FTC? Are they influencing your decision? There were some really hard hitting questions that were asked there. And it seemed to me that the CMA and the officials didn't necessarily provide a strong reasoning to their MPs. Now, that's subjective, but I also heard them say things like, they've been dealing with a lot of these cases in the past, with other companies like Google, and Google have been in a good spot to have these conversations with them and make remedies and, make sure that things actually work out in a way where they're not sitting in a monopolistic position. And so, we heard them say that. Now, the question is, did the CMA ever give Microsoft any, opportunities to actually provide its remedies? Because we remember Microsoft at this time was pretty much signing a lot of these deals with companies like Nvidia and even Nintendo and Steam to bring their Call of Duty games to these platforms. Possibly now that the EU has allowed for Microsoft to go on with this deal, but in order for them to do it, to promise to provide Activision games to other cloud services, it appears that the CMA might have to take these new modified remedies into consideration, because not only now is this going to be the concern, but that concern has basically been vaporized, the concern that the CMA had. So I think the CMA was probably too harsh with their decision. I think they just went straight up no, rather than looking to see if there were any more possibilities. So this is where I say things right now may seem a little wonky, but we might be seeing Microsoft get a really strong position when things get re-examined, especially with the FTC case, because the FTC case is all about litigation. Everyone's going to be dropping their lawyers and everyone's going to be dropping their, they're going to be throwing their weight around. So it's going to be very interesting. But if Microsoft were to go ahead with Activision, and I say, PlayStation being fine, I think it will still benefit gamers overall. It will bring Sony down from their really high place right now. A lot of Sony gamers don't necessarily want to admit the value proposition that they're missing out on when it comes to their wallets. The games are nice and shiny. There's no doubt about that. The Last of Us, Horizon games and God of War games, they look really solid, but that's not really the value proposition that we are having right now in terms of gaming. In fact, right now, I think your wallet and how much you're spending on your games is a conversation that is eventually going to start to rack up pretty soon. You see, the $70 game has showed up. And with the $70 game means more games coming out, means more $70 games. Everyone's going to start asking questions like, yo, man, what are you wanting me to pay? Imagine if 6 games are coming out in 1 year and you actually have an interest in just half of them. That's $210. That's not with DLC. That's not with other things. Imagine if all 6 of them you wanted to buy day one. That's $400. That's about almost a console to buy these games. So these questions, once they start getting asked, I think a lot of people are going to start seeing that the value proposition, of not being able to offer games on some subscription services with Sony might eventually become inconvenient. And Microsoft seems to be wanting to alleviate, the gamers, stress on their wallet, which is a value proposition directive. And I think it will influence Sony to move that direction as well, to be able to keep up and compete. So overall, gamers are going to win regardless of how it goes, because even if they don't buy Activision, I hope you guys know they can always buy another really big studio as well. They can always buy something shiny with $66 billion. It won't be $66 billion large though, but it'll be some really sick money, but they can get the job done with that. And they can pretty much bring a huge library into their, Game Pass subscription service. And the FTC and CMA and all these other folk wouldn't even breathe a sigh, because those deals are going to feel kind of small. But, they're also going to be one more addition that they can pretty much take, and get the job done in terms of increasing their holding, in terms of gaming, and in terms of their reach, and so on and so forth. But these are just my thoughts regarding all of this. I just want to go ahead and share it in this video. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.